What do you think? Hey, good morning. Good Saturday morning. It's a great morning, actually. A lot of excitement today. Today is Texas OU, or as they say in Oklahoma, OU Texas Day. The game will be starting here. If it hasn't already, it'll be starting shortly. So all of you OU fans there in Norman can be excited. Well, actually, the ones in Dallas, because it happens at the State Fair every year. But I'm wondering, is it still at the State Fair, or I thought I heard somewhere that they ended the State Fair earlier this year or something.
No, that it's still at the State Fair. They did talk about moving it.
I think the fair ended last week.
That's what I saw.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I think that's why I think the fair ended a week before the game, which is
somebody told me their daughter was going down there, but they weren't going to the football game. They were just going to go to the fair, or maybe they're just going to the tailgating. I don't know, but it is still at the Cotton Bowl, because they had talked about at one time moving out to Jerry World or whatever. But I guess they have spent a bunch of money on the Cotton Bowl to renovate it.
Yeah. Hey, Randy, if you'll put your mic a little closer, I'll bring it down.
One of the things they did, perfect. I think was it Monday night, the week before, the Dallas Cowboys played a game at the Cotton Bowl during the fair.
Okay.
I think that's kind of why, was because the SEC kind of moved the rivalry game back a week. And so all of a sudden during the fair, there's no game. So the Cowboys said, well, we'll do a Monday night game. That's my theory. Well,
it's always been the second Saturday, or at least as long as I can remember, it's been the second Saturday in October. So I don't think the game moved, but something else may have changed.
I remember way back when I was working a retailer and we put a booth at the fair, and somebody said, now that last Saturday, this OU T-shirt vendor, they're going to be blaring their horns every time OU scores against Texas. So it used to be during our second weekend of our fair.
Okay.
But it wasn't this time. So,
no.
Yes.
I don't know. So, because I've got my own Texas KU game coming up tonight. Texas Tech, that is.
Yeah.
That one is this evening. And OSU, actually, that game's also should be going on right about now.
Yeah. Now, in the way of street cred, by the way, our guest today is Randy Krehbiel, veteran journalist for Tulsa World. I think pretty much most of your career, if not all. Was
veteran.
Just about all.
And you were a sports writer for them.
Correct.
And, but I don't know, you kind of shifted around to politics.
Well, it was limiting his scope, his broad reach. Randy is a master of many gifts. Yeah. And so I do have to say, Randy, we don't always agree on everything, but I do appreciate your writing and the things you do write about. You're what I believe is one of the more fair and objective journalist at the World. But I also appreciate you coming in here to be with us, either annually or semi-annually or whatever, but I appreciate that.
I always enjoy talking to you guys.
Well, good.
Okay.
Good. That's good. So anyway, beyond sports, it's a pretty big, I mean, every week it's weird. I guess since Trump has been president, every week is a monumental week or something. So this week, the big news is these apparent peace negotiations have finally, supposedly, allegedly, come to fruition, and Hamas is going to release the rest of the hostages, and then Israel is going to eventually back out of Palestine. And, you know, my thought personally, and I would like to hear each of your thoughts as well, but my thought is we haven't done anything. Nothing has been accomplished. Nothing has really happened, because Hamas is still going to retain its influence, whether it's overt or covert. We're still going to, and they still hate the Jews, and they still believe from the river to the sea, they will be free. That none of that has changed. Israel, I think, is responding to this worldwide, for lack of a better term, Jew hatred that is fomented and growing. So I think they have finally, Netanyahu has capitulated to all of the adverse adverse publicity and pressure that has come upon them. So I would love your opinion on this. Let's start with you, Randy. Do you think that this is a legitimate peace? Do you think it will hold?
Well, history says probably not. But I mean, and I'm
boom! You just killed it.
I'm not. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to answer the question the best I know how. I don't know the details, and so, but it just based on history, it seems like these things always come apart, and you still have the basic problem of a group of people that are basically nationless, and that's the Palestinians. And whether they're led by Hamas or someone else, you have that group of people, and the current government of Israel does not want to, apparently does not want to recognize that. And so I would have to somewhat disagree with Eddie. There are always people who are going to, quote, hate the Jews. But I think in this particular case, it's more a disagreement with the policy of the government of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu than it is any renewed anti-Semitism per se. I mean, you've had, so Hamas started it, they killed almost 2,000 people, but there have been almost 70,000 Palestinians killed. And Gaza has been virtually demolished. And a lot of people are questioning whether that was a reasonable response. It's hard, I think it's hard for us sitting here to understand or to know, because on the one hand, you look at what has happened to Gaza, and it's easy to have sympathy for those folks. If you're an Israeli or a close friend of Israel, you look at it and you say, well, they shouldn't have embraced Hamas. But if you talk to Middle Easterners, they'll say, well, Hamas only had a chance because the Palestinians were ignored. So I don't know. It's because of that complexity. It's not because of anything, the President Trump or anybody else did or didn't, any one thing they did or didn't do. I just think it's such a complex situation, and you have these just really fundamentally opposed ideas about what ought to happen there. Netanyahu says there's no two-state solution, and a lot of the Gazans say, or the Palestinians say, we must have a two-state solution. So,
you really brought to light an important thing here. When a nation takes over the fruits of a success in war, new territory, normally they try their best to assimilate the population and the territory as part of the bigger nation. Israel didn't do that. They literally walled them off. I think they've done a better job on the West Bank, Israel has, although you talk to Palestinian Christians there and they say, no, they're stealing our land, right? And it's clearly a racist thing there, because if they're both citizens, but say, no, we're going to take from your family and tribe and give it over to this Jewish family and tribe. People have a problem with that. Mike Huckabee raised a fit about it recently. But let's go back to prior to the 1967 Six-Day War, which is a huge success by anybody's account for Israel. Prior to that, wasn't Gaza part of Egypt proper?
I think that's correct.
Right. And the terms, as I best understand them, of this proposed deal that we're in the final hours seeing if it's going to happen, is that Egypt is going to restore to the operational part of it So it's kind of becoming a little bit going back to Egypt. And I would say Israel, if they had their druthers, said we should have gave it back to Egypt rather than make it basically a slum, a ghetto, truly a ghetto.
But see, that's a whole part of it is that everyone is pointing fingers at Israel while Egypt and Jordan won't accept the Palestinians into their country. In other words, those borders are totally sealed to the Palestinians.
Until this deal.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. That's a whole part of it. So how can you totally blame Israel, for being so cruel and heartless or hating the Palestinians?
Yeah, no,
when these other two countries, which are Muslim countries essentially, and they won't let them in. And it speaks to me about who these people really are, that nobody wants them. And it's like gypsies in Germany.
To that point, Egypt said, we don't want Gaza back. And Jordan said, we don't want the West Bank back. This is back in the 80s.
Right. And my understanding, and I could be completely wrong with this, is that the concern there, but every Middle East country is a little bit unstable. Almost everyone has got some, and so anything that changes anything makes them nervous, right? Mm-hmm. In the case, I think, of Gaza, it's probably like whatever the percentage is. I'm going to say 90% of the Palestinians, they're just people, but the concern is how many of these folks are going to be
a problem.
They're going to be agitating,
destabilizing to our
further. I mean, Egypt has been very unstable in the not so distant past.
I'll tell you what. Here's what's interesting, and what you make me think. Okay, in the Western, they're both descendants of Abraham. It goes all the way back to that. Okay, the Palestinians essentially are Esau's children, and the Jews are Isaac's children. And it's funny, the Jews are pretty much hated and unwanted throughout the Western world. They've suffered persecution and been looked down upon and persecuted throughout history in Russia, particularly in Europe. America has been nice to them. And the Palestinians are not wanted by any of the Islamic country. So it's almost like it's the same group of people. We just have different people who don't like them. In essence, I think nobody really likes either one of them, and they hate each other. And so you got this really weird, tough situation of trying to reconcile something that in my book is irreconcilable. I mean, it's
hard.
Yeah, it is. And rather than if the Palestinians had been able to just assimilate into Jordan and Egypt and Syria and these, lands around them, we might not have that big of a problem. And because in Israel, or even in Israel, because even in the Knesset, the parliament of Israel, Palestinians or Arabs have seats. They are actually elected officials to represent their constituencies. So it can't just be we hate all Palestinians. There's something there beyond that to cause them. And of course, one of them is, you killed 2,000 of my people, and I'm going to say, okay, we're going to let this one go, and we're going to let that go. And when they're constantly shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free, and which essentially means we're going to kill every Jew alive, talking about jihad and holy war on the Jewish side, which is what we would call it. So it's a real mess. And personally, I'm almost to the point, go biblical on it, just totally eradicate Hamas totally. Yeah. And I know it defies our Western sensibilities, but you cannot cure gangrene by just pulling out a certain part of it or putting a bandage on it. Hamas is the gangrene. And it's not going to end if you say, okay, all right, we're going to let this one go. You killed 2,000 of our people. We killed several thousand of yours in this attempt to dissuade you. But now go back to as it was. All you're doing is waiting for the next time.
So if I may, let me tell you a story that is a different perspective on this. There's a guy here in town who immigrated decades ago from the Middle East, and has been a successful person here. He loves the United States, but he gets very frustrated with our foreign policy in the Middle East, and not just us, Europe and everybody. And this is his perspective. Israel, the Jews in Israel are not Jews. They're Europeans. They have very little Jewish heritage. They have been integrated over thousands of years. Mm-hmm. They were placed in the Middle East to cause a disruption, prevent the Arab and the Middle Eastern countries from uniting, mm-hmm. from using their natural resources, their oil and gas, to a common cause, and that that we would have no Hamas if it weren't for the treatment of the Palestinians, and that Israel wants Hamas because Hamas gives Israel a reason to do the things that it does. And now, I'm not saying I'm endorsing that idea. I'm telling you that is the other side of it.
Well, that would explain another mystery. How did this invasion 2 years ago go unnoticed by the great Mossad?
That is also part of the story I have heard.
And Benjamin Netanyahu said, we'll deal with that later. Really? Because if you allow this to happen, it gives you greater liberty to really come down on the hammer, right?
Yeah. So
I'll call it a conspiracy theory, but a lot of people have the same questions that you're talking about.
Well, I'm bringing all this up just to kind of give a different perspective on it, and also to show, this is how we get things like Hamas, is that you put people in a corner and you don't give them very many options. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how we get things like Hamas. That's how we get communist parties mm-hmm. that aren't really communist parties. They're just people who are mad at everybody and are trying to fight their way out of a corner.
Right.
But the problem with that is there are communists. There are radical Islamists. If we call Palestinians, and if that culture permeates, that subculture permeates a culture, then it would be like the Ku Klux Klan in America. Okay,
but all of those things require somebody to feel as if they're being oppressed or shortchanged in some way.
Mm-hmm. But see, the oppression and the shortchanging is not just on behalf of Israel. Israel has said, if you go, I
want to make it clear here that I'm not attacking Israel.
Oh, no. But I just want to clarify it for our people. If you look at a map and if you go east, Saudi Arabia, there's so much uncharted and unoccupied land over on the across the Jordan, across the Red Sea, and it's all of this beyond Jordan. Jordan's just at the southern end. But if you take all that, you've got all of that land and stuff you've got there. You've got parts of Egypt. And those nations essentially have shut the door. They say, we don't want you. They do not want the Palestinians because they know how the Palestinians to the rest of the Arab world are like Jews to the Western world. And it's the weirdest thing because, again, they're both children of Abraham, and regardless on whether side, they're rejected by the world. So you got the Palestinians, which are rejected by the Islamic world, and you've got the Jews that are rejected by the Western world, and so that's part of it. And so what do? they spend their time now, instead of fighting together as a unified children of Abraham against the rest of the world, they're turning the guns on each other all the time to be
There is a faction. I think J.C. Watts one time referred to the race baiters, those who want to stir up dissension. The Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt helped found Hamas, but later disowned them. I think Egypt wants a certain moderation and stable nation themselves, and definitely Jordan does.
Yeah.
And I think that's largely what's influencing them, saying we don't want these refugees because they are so stoked up with their hatred. Remember what Trump said when he had a peace deal, or at least a ceasefire, and then both sides just started bombing each other, and he started dropping some F-bombs. He said, they don't know what the blank they're doing. They've been so angry at each other, fighting for so long, they don't know how to not fight.
Jacob and Esau, several thousand.
Oh, that was Iran and in Israel. That's right. That one was.
But I would, and I don't know this, but being the naturally suspicious person I am, I suspect there's some profit motive involved in some of this stuff.
Oh,
and by that I mean, let's just take the Palestinians and Hamas. You have people who are really are oppressed. Okay,
right.
But the leaders of Hamas are not in Gaza.
Oh, they were in Qatar, and then they got bombed in Qatar.
Switzerland, even Switzerland.
They're
Europe.
somewhere else, and they're, I can't ascribe motives to any one particular person, but there's money to be made in chaos.
You know what was said back in the 70s? I think it was Kissinger might have said it. The Saudis are determined to wipe out Israel if it takes every last Egyptian to do it. But that kind of goes in line with your, prophet, the puppet masters here.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of people globally that always wanted Yasser Arafat to live in tents because it furthered their cause, their anti-Israel cause. But now you haven't seen it. The Abraham Accords, the peace deals with Jordan and with Egypt and stuff. I think there's a growing faction that says, you know what, we better start getting along.
No, we're tired of this mess. But having said all of that, being a Bible-believing person and believing the prophecies in the Bible, I have to say I'm really worried about the shouts of peace in our time, peace, because it's now, it's like Neville Chamberlain coming back saying peace back.
But you're worried. Why are you worried?
Because I don't trust the Palestinians. I don't trust the people behind them, with them. And what has happened, I still just don't understand how it would be like somebody coming into your house, killing half the family, taking the other half hostage. And then at the end of the hostage negotiation, they come out looking like the victim.
So how does that tie into end time prophecy then?
Oh, well, the prophecy is that when you hear peace, suddenly destruction will come.
Sure.
And so I would not be surprised if we don't find ourselves in an all-out war over there within the next couple of years.
That worries you?
It worries me because people don't get it. And because, see, we're looking at these two countries over here, but Russia and China are not fair players.
Yeah, it's true. In Battle of Armageddon said the great army of the East.
Or the North.
Yeah, and then Gog and Magog, and I get all that. I'm just really careful. I believe all the scripture. I just haven't filled in the blanks using today's
I don't have any specific thing I can point to. But if you just look at the state that the world is in general, when it comes to faith and so forth, and then you've got these political situations that are throwing fuel on that fire.
Sure.
That's just what worries me. So I'm not ready to say hallelujah. Everything's wonderful now, peachy keen.
Monsignor, are we misunderstanding the scriptures?
Well, I'm not
rabbi.
I'm not a rabbi, nor am I a holy man of any kind. But I'm not an expert on Revelation, but I kind of decided a long time ago. I think it was after we decided that the guy in Libya was the Antichrist and nothing really. Gaddafi. I
thought it was Gorbachev.
Yeah, whatever. I mean,
Hitler. It was Hitler. It was Stalin.
So here's the thing. If you believe in prophecy, whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
There you go. I'm with you.
And so I've quit worrying about that.
Yeah.
But I agree with Eddie that I'm very concerned about what's going on.
Yeah.
Because whether it's prophecy or just human events, I think that there's a lot of things that are coming together, and we always go through these cycles, but we just have, and I think I've mentioned this maybe the last time I was here, but it just seems to me like mankind is at a point where we have a lot of decisions to make that have no easy outcomes. And whatever, like we were just on this scale, we were talking about how you got these two groups of people that seem inalterably opposed to each other, trying to live next door to each other.
I'm glad you went back to that point, because I think it was an anthropologist I was hearing a podcast who said historically through the ages, when you have a situation like this, two peoples that are just so
a family feud. The Hatfields and McCoys.
Says it has always ended in genocide. And if we can avoid that, we will make world history.
See, I hate that word, or I don't hate the word. I believe there is such a word, but the only genocide I know that has ever happened was when God told the Israelites to go through the land and wipe out every man, woman, child, and animal. That's genocide. Just because you're at war, in other words, was the bombing at Hiroshima and Nagasaki was our offense against Japan, was that genocide? We killed a lot more people a lot more quickly. In Europe was a genocide, because the true definition of genocide means wiping out an entire race of people. Okay.
Well, there's been great attempts. Adolf Hitler, Rwanda.
But the only ones that truly could be wiped from the face of the earth are the Jews, because they're the only ones located in a small area like that. Two bombs and boom, they're gone.
What happened in Rwanda was an attempt at wiping out an entire tribe.
That was attempted. That would be close to it. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I mean, I think there are probably more Jews living in New York than are living in Israel.
That is true.
Right. That is true. But that's the closest thing I can think of to a true genocide, and versus. We throw words around too quickly and easily. It's genocide.
I'm talking about motive and intent, whether it's carried out effectively or not.
But I don't think that's a problem. Israel is not trying to eradicate Palestinians from the earth, because if they did that, they'd start in their own country, get all of the Palestinians together and take them out of their government.
But they've locked them in a ghetto called Gaza.
And they've killed a bunch of them.
No, they're in the actual Israel.
I'm talking about the ones in Gaza are living in a Polish ghetto.
But who locked them in? Jordan's got it blocked. Egypt has it blocked. They can't go anywhere else.
No, that's true.
And so Israel isn't saying you're locked in here. They're just saying, we can't allow you to come in and blow up and have terrorism.
Yeah, you've got
and
Egypt.
We have borders.
Egypt did lock their borders. You're right.
Jordan is
the Mediterranean is the Mediterranean, and then Israel closed the last two sides of the wall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And why did Israel do that?
Yeah, but yet they still claimed authority over it. That's what I'm saying is normally when you occupy, you try to assimilate. They did not do that.
Well, but they're not exactly and have not exercised any authority because it's been the Palestinian authority in Gaza that's been running it.
That's not real autonomy.
Well,
Israel totally controls who goes in and out.
Well, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's like Mexico. Israel doesn't control who goes in and out. It's the Palestinians. They may control who comes out of it, but they're not controlling.
They're trying to leave themselves and can't.
They're trying to do what?
The people of Gaza are trying to get out themselves and can't.
But why is Israel any worse than Jordan and Egypt?
Well, particularly in this case, it'd be Egypt because Jordan is quite a ways east. But
yeah, but still, nevertheless, yeah. Why is Israel the bad guys when Egypt is bigger, much bigger, and could let the people escape? And not only that, but even the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, is not letting the people out. They're actually
PLO's gone,
holding,
but yeah,
they're holding.
Palestinian Authority.
I meant Hamas. Yeah, they're holding the people hostage, and there's so many layers to this, which are just we could go on.
Right? Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, it seems like it's almost like. It seems like in interpersonal relationships. If you want to start, if you've had a feud with somebody for years and you decide I'm tired with this, you almost have to go to them and say, look, let's just start over. Let's just be willing to forgive each other our past transgressions and go forward.
It's the ultimate family feud.
But
the Hatfields and McCoys on a national level.
Always trying to extract, revenge or whatever you want to call it for past wrongs.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. To me, it just seems like it gets into a never ending spiral and then that just perpetuates the feud.
Yep. I agree.
But both parties have to be willing to say, okay, you know what? We've expressed our dissatisfaction with you and now there's nothing more we can do.
Here's the last thing that bugs me about the whole deal. Israel is the bad guys, but yet the Palestinians have not, as we shifted, they have not been willing to release the last of the hostages until now. And so how does this group of people be the bad guy? Again, it just common sense tells you on a micro level, if somebody holds a group of people hostage, they've killed the family, most of the family, and they've got a few of them left, and neighbors too. And then in the end of it, they come out, the guys negotiating peace. And, and basically they go scot-free and probably get a few bennies on top of it after perpetrating that. If you did it on a micro level here with either in a city or a town scale, you would never buy that. That could never happen. But somehow, because of all of the disenchantment that is fomented against the Jews and against Israel, that's exactly what we're doing. We're basically rewarding Hamas for what they did that people apparently have forgotten what they did.
Well, so it depends on how you look at things, but the let's say 2,000. I if that's okay with the number of people killed in Israel, but again, there's been like 65, 70,000 Palestinians killed. Okay, who's responsible for that? Is it Hamas, or is it Israel? Is it both? Because not everybody that was killed in Gaza was.
How many people were killed at Pearl Harbor?
I don't know, but I think it was less than 2,000.
Yeah,
okay, and how many were killed in Nagasaki and Hiroshima?
True.
Yeah, but let's not conflate it, Randy.
But Pearl Harbor wasn't the only other battle of World War II.
Well,
no. If there is evidence that civilian Palestinians were targeted for death by Israel, that would be the same as what Hamas did in the original invasion.
And let's be clear, Hamas triggered all of this with their invasion. Now
invasion, Randy, here's my point, of civilians.
Yeah.
If Israel is going after civilians and targeting, then you have, that equates each other. Yeah. But otherwise to say, well, 70,000 died here and 2,000 there, as though by the same intent.
Well, and the embedding your military in hospitals, schools, and civilian areas. This isn't
human shield.
Human shield. It's not a fair fight, because if Hamas had just put everybody in front, we're just going to fight.
Yeah.
But when you're firing missiles and artillery and everything from a school, and you're keeping the students and the faculty and everybody hostage there, they can't leave, and
so that's
right. Yeah, Randy, I'm sorry I interrupted your thoughts.
Well, no, I'm just going to say that's why I began this little segment with is who's responsible for those? Is it Hamas because they started it and because they, in some cases, apparently used them? I'm not sure that it was as pervasive. It's hard to tell. I wouldn't necessarily believe everything that we hear from either side.
Right. But if I'm Hamas and I set up rocket launchers in the hospital parking lot, and then Israel takes out that launch site, they might have some collateral damage at the hospital too.
Right. And so, this is an unusual situation in that there's really I don't think there's hardly any open country in Gaza. It's all built up. And so, whenever you have, to me, this is warfare.
Yeah.
Right. And so whenever you have warfare, civilians are going to get killed.
Yeah.
Right.
But again, you get into, okay, so what was the reason for it? We know why Israel responded. What was the reason for the magnitude of their response, and was it, is there justification for it?
Yeah. And here's another point.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Here's another point. This is an area, Gaza, that's smaller than the city of Tulsa. And how many years now? It's been 2 years to do a cleanup operation in an area smallness. If you want to magnify the starvation principle, it's not our fault. We didn't kill them. But by dragging it out, you're magnifying the starvation that's going to happen. So
yeah, Israel might have been better off if they had just sent their troops in from one end of the country or this Gaza Strip and just gone through and just eradicate the military faction. But that's so hard to do because how do you know who's...
Yeah, so we're talking about door-to-door fighting.
Right.
It's tough.
So I think, the use of air power from a military standpoint is completely understandable. Because if Israel would have lost more troops trying to go door to door, I think, than they lost in the original incident.
Right.
And it's again, it's just a really hard. It's just a really hard deal, and it's again, I don't know.
Sure.
Everybody's got their own perspective on it.
Now that you've gotten all the answers, we might move on.
I'm not done.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Right. No, back to the original.
More wisdom coming.
Yeah. No, back to the original point, though, is I don't think it's over. That's the bottom line.
I agree with you.
All right. We agree. We ended on agreement. We don't think it's over. This is just a pregnant pause.
Haters going to hate.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that there's anything that if it doesn't work out, I would not blame the president because it hadn't worked out for anybody else.
Right. I just hope he doesn't and hasn't, because I haven't listened closely to what he may have said. But please don't say peace in our time. Don't go Neville Chamberlain on us. Right. Peace in our time. I've ended the dispute between these two countries because Sorry, you haven't. It's going to continue.
So I got a question, Randy. We're seeing a series of indictments on Washington officials from the Biden administration. And really some of them, like John Bolton, was from the previous Trump administration, and Bush. Comey, now is it the Attorney General of New York?
Yes.
And then
Big Tish.
And then there's others like Fannie Willis is rumored that that's going to happen and stuff. The big narrative on the left is this is just retribution. This is just taking out your political enemies, in that, as though Biden wasn't doing that. But I'm looking for somebody to give me the fair, unbiased, because I'm going to be biased on this. Randy, how do you take this whole development?
So actually, I do think it's retribution.
Okay.
Because that's kind of the way President Trump works. You're either for me or against me.
Or is it the way politicians work? I mean,
there is an element of that. I don't know that it's been to the. So, what I've been told is that the Biden administration was just a lot smoother about it. And I think there was some of that. But what I would say to that is because one guy got away with burglaring a house doesn't mean that somebody else gets to burgle a house. I mean, just because one of my kids misbehaves doesn't give the other kid the right to misbehave.
Okay, of the charges you've heard, whether it's official indictment or the common narrative in the media, which of those things do you think are baseless and not worth prosecuting?
So baseless and not worth prosecuting are two different things.
Well,
and really all I know is what I've read. So Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, she has two homes. She listed both of them as primary residences for mortgage purposes, which is something that a lot of people do, including people in the current Trump administration have done. It's not unusual, especially for people who have situations where, in her case, I guess she's originally from somewhere outside of New York City. And
her dad is from Virginia.
Okay. So, and then you had the Federal Reserve board member that he tried to fire. Same thing. She has a house in, I think it's either Minnesota or Wisconsin. And then she bought a house in Atlanta. Adam Schiff has a home in California, which he represents. He has a home in the Washington, D.C. area. I would point out that several members of our congressional delegation have homes in Oklahoma
but that's not the crime. It has to do with mortgage.
It has to do with mortgages. But my understanding, and I could be wrong, is this is going to be very. First of all, I don't know of anybody that's ever really been prosecuted for this. Now, it may happen. It's only really a crime if you are misleading the lender and you actually derive some kind of benefit from doing it.
That's exactly what they accuse Trump of, right?
Right, but I think in this case
so in one, it depends on which case you're talking about.
Overvaluing assets like Mar-a-Lago.
Okay, that is different. That's different because in that case, now again, I don't know if it was worth prosecuting Trump on that, but in that case, is the way I recall the case, he had overvalued some of his property in Manhattan.
Maybe it was Trump Tower.
Okay, you're showing a bias, Randy. They allege that he had. Are you convinced he had?
Okay, they allege, but I think I can't remember whether that was actually ever.
Because what they claimed his worth was way undervaluing it.
Well,
Like
as far as
18 million?
Mar-Lago,
Mar-Lago.
they undervalued the property.
So
by
So I don't remember So the case I remember was in
New York, Trump
New
Tower.
York.
Trump Tower, yeah.
And the claim was that he had overvalued property in New York, and by overvaluing it, he was able to qualify for a loan that he would not, or not him personally, but his company would have qualified for a loan that he probably would not otherwise have been able to get. Now, his argument was that, values are squishy. Everybody got paid. And so there was so let's get back to baseless and worth prosecuting. Was that charge baseless? No, probably not. Was it worth prosecuting?
Wait a minute. It wasn't baseless, the charge against Trump?
No, it wasn't baseless because there was a credible allegation that they overvalued the property. Okay. Was it worth prosecuting? I think a lot of people would say no.
But see, there's a big difference.
It was the only time it was ever prosecuted, according to my.
No. So the one that he was convicted of was the one that involved the moving the money around to pay Stormy Daniels. That's what he was convicted of.
No, because Tish was dancing around all happy because she was ready to take his properties to pay the damages for the New York. But what I was going to say, though, here's the difference in the two. In the case of Trump and the Trump Tower, all of the creditors received their payment in full. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a federal or state government issue. In other words, he never underpaid his property taxes. He never defrauded the government, the state of New York. What he did was he set a value. The people bought his valuation and lent him the money, and then were paid back. There were no injury. There was no one harmed in the deal. Whereas in Virginia, by claiming the property as a home that she lived in, it's like us taking a homestead exemption here. It defrauded the state of Virginia, not private investors.
So I didn't think that's what she was indicted on.
No, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is.
I'm pretty sure that it's on. Now, and you're probably right, but my understanding is it was for mortgage fraud. Yeah, and it had to do with having mortgages on two properties that you claimed as primary residences, right, which is, I understand.
Right, the homestead issue, claiming that was not in the indictment, it's a point.
What I'm saying is maybe it's not a homestead deal, but what they did is defrauded the state of Virginia by claiming that as a home and taking certain tax advantages. In other words,
but that's not what she was indicted for.
No, in federal court. It was federal indictments, and it had to do with the mortgage application.
Yeah, that's not what she was indicted for.
Right, but you can't just indict someone. In other words, if all she did is file that, there's a reason that that's against the law, because she's defrauding somebody by the misstatement on there.
Only if the mortgage person you're getting the mortgage from doesn't know what you're doing.
No, it's about taxes. This is not a mortgage issue.
It's not.
Tish James?
Yeah, no, it's about mortgage fraud. That's what they're trying to get Adam Schiff on. That's what they're going after her on. There was somebody else that they.
Do the research. Text us.
Yeah. But I want to say, and this would be a good.
But again,
yeah, okay.
But again, it comes back to: is it baseless? No. Is it worth prosecuting? I would say probably not. Although the issue you raise about the taxes. I don't know can you have, that would be a matter of state law. Can you have a homestead exemption in more than one state?
Well, yeah, but Mike Hunter, remember that one? Mike Hunter was claiming claiming to be a citizen here. He was our attorney general at the time.
Right. So this has come up. this comes up fairly often. I mean, something similar to it actually came up with Kathy Taylor when she was mayor, because she had a home in Florida and she had a home here.
I remember the voting twice.
There was a voting thing, but I don't remember if there was a tax thing. What I'm saying is that none of these are like Al Capone type stuff.
No, but here's the difference. Okay, Tish was so adamant saying no one is above the law. It was essentially saying you do the crime,
it's so
you do
ironic.
the time. So those words have come back to haunt her, because not only that, but if you're the chief law enforcement officer of the state of New York and you're here breaking the law, essentially, there needs to be restitution or some kind of punishment for doing that, because if not, then how can you prosecute anybody below you? I mean,
so this seems to me like this is one of those cases that we'll just have to see what happens.
Okay, here's
because we don't know whether but look.
Well, we know she signed and claimed both of them as a home, as a residence, when she was renting the one in Virginia out.
Well,
she didn't even have residence in Virginia. She was a resident of New York. And it's clearly against the law. What she did is against the law.
Okay. And
now, it's very much against the law.
And let me explain why. Because the risk that a mortgage lender takes is greater when the person paying the mortgage doesn't live in it, taking care of it and maintaining its value.
Right.
But here's what I want to get at is what's typically done. If a person defaults on a mortgage, that's usually handled in whether it's bankruptcy or civil courts, right?
Right.
But when they find out there's a fraud going on and the person's going to file bankruptcy, I'll take a local example. My kids used to love going to Cafe Bona, coffee house in South Tulsa. Well, they went under. Well, Arvis Bank lost a lot of money, and they looked at the assets that were listed on, and those assets weren't really assets. And there was a lot more liabilities. The owners of Cafe Bona went to prison because of that fraud. And Arvis Bank lost a lot of money. So there are times to go to civil courts on it, but most of the time it's in
right. And I don't think anybody in any of these cases is claiming that the actual value, in other words, that the mortgages are in danger of default. The only issue is, did the lenders know that they had more than one residence?
Mm-hmm.
And did the person owning, whether it's Letitia James or Adam Shiver, whoever it is, did they get any material benefit from that? And I'm not a lawyer, and I just think this is. I don't know enough, so I'm just kind of sitting back and saying, we'll see what happens.
Here's the real concern. It comes down to selective prosecution, selective enforcement of law. And in Donald Trump's case, everybody was paid back, right? And I mean, was it Mr. Wonderful that says, with this happening, good luck, New York property investors, because if it happens to him, it can happen to any of us. I'm saying that was selective based on precedent. We don't have a precedent of anybody else under similar conditions.
And that's why I said with that case, and God knows I'm not an attorney, and I'm especially not a real estate attorney, so I don't know. So I'm just looking at this as a guy, okay? Is it baseless? I would say no. Is it worth prosecuting? Mm-hmm. I would also say no. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe you go to them and say, don't do that anymore or something. I don't know. But district attorneys don't prosecute every.
No, that's true.
They don't prosecute every charge that's filed. And sometimes, you're better off, it's just, We do that with a lot of we see that. I think we've seen that a lot, especially over the last 10 years or so, or maybe I'm just more aware of it. But you look at what governments do and you think, well, okay, they're following the law, but are they really making the best use of their resources?
Yeah, but I think it goes beyond that. The basis of all law is someone being harmed or has someone been harmed.
Yeah.
And you've got tort law, which is basically person to person. And then you got federal and state law, which is the government versus the individual or vice versa.
Civil courts, criminal courts.
Right. And so in the case of Trump, it should have been a civil thing because basically all he did was overvalue his properties, but everyone was paid back. And it wasn't really the state that was harmed. In fact, the state was never harmed because you still had to pay the taxes on everything.
Oh, I would say the state was helped because you didn't have an empty building. You had building producing taxes.
Right. And so, but in Tish James's situation, you've got a situation where she is claiming a homestead exemption, which there was harm to the state of Virginia.
Well, then she should be charged with that, but she hasn't been charged with that.
Yeah, the state hasn't acted on it.
But she hasn't been charged with that.
Okay, well, right. So the federal court is claiming fraud
in the mortgage, yes.
Right. And okay, so we'll see how it all pans out. I thought it was the state courts that are bringing the action in Virginia.
Randy?
No, as I understand it, it's the same U.S. attorney that he put in to indict Comey.
Well, if that's jurisdiction, I don't know.
I think it is.
Okay. And listen, I love the insights you bring. Okay. If this sounds like it's a strong argument, believe me, we really appreciate it.
Because this is what the people, we flesh out the things people at home don't ever think about or consider. So it's great to have your opinion and people can do their homework at home.
And as David for sure knows, I'm not the last word on anything. This is just the way it seems from what I know, and I could change my mind tomorrow if new information becomes to light. But
it's an interesting life, Randy. I remember I was president.
I'll take the mantle. I'll have the last word.
I was president of the Tulsa Republican Assembly, and I think I was getting ready to let John Bennett speak. And I noticed you were in the crowd, because Bennett's in town. And he's always delicious, right? His speeches. And I recognized, I said, oh, my friend Randy Krehbiel is here. Yeah, welcome, Randy. Mostly I was trying to signal to John, Tulsa World's president.
Right.
Be on your good behavior. But afterwards he came up and says, Dave, I got to correct you. Journalists don't have friends; they have sources.
Sources, that's funny.
And I really thought about that. I quoted you accurately there. That stuck out to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, so that I like to think that I do have friends. Now, the people I think are friends may have a different opinion on that. But it's one of the difficult things that you have in this business is that, everybody is a potential source.
Yeah, and truth has to be your biggest loyalty.
Yeah, I mean, not that I'm comparing myself to a district attorney or law enforcement or anything, but I do think about that a little bit sometimes. Sometimes people in law enforcement have to arrest, their friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Kralachek. Did you see how much Steve Kunzweiler agonized in that press conference?
Yeah.
But now we have to. He's not proven guilty. He's assumed to be, and Sheriff Regalato's looking like, that's sleazeball. And Joe sat in your chair too. So we know Joe. We've appreciated what he did to help the city through some tough times. But nonetheless, there are victims.
Yeah.
We have to protect them. I want to talk about, I'm going to go to another thing. There are text messages that evidently a Democrat contributor got by mistake from a candidate for Attorney General, Jay Jones.
In Virginia.
Yeah. And a lot of people have been asking, hey, should this guy be trusted to be the head law enforcement official in the state when he's talking about killing kids because of their politics or their parents?
Yeah. So I don't know a whole lot about this case, but from what I have seen, I would expect the voters in Virginia to decide he should not be their attorney general.
Ultimately, yeah. You have to. Yeah.
Now, maybe he'll drop out or pressured out or whatever, but that's just, again, I don't know the whole story. And we all, get mad and say things we shouldn't, but it's one reason we ought to stay off, the phone sometimes. But
yeah,
but it just seems like a pretty clear lack of judgment.
Yeah, buttons you're pressing, Eddie.
Am I?
Yeah, there you go.
I don't think I was.
Yeah, but here's the thing that sticks out to me: not one elected official or current candidate in his Democrat Party has called for his resignation on that.
I think that, so you're right. And I think we just live in a time when people, there have been some things that have come out of some Republican officials over the years that have not been too good. And you sometimes, but don't always see response. And that's, that's unfortunate because, you ought to do what's right, whatever that is. And I don't, I don't know what the process in Virginia would be. But just to say, look, this isn't right. We shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. He could be giving the Democrat opponent the best gift ever by staying in.
Yeah, I don't know if he could be replaced. I don't know what the law is there.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it seems like the honorable thing to do would be to drop out.
Yeah, most states do these elections in even number years. So much different about Virginia. I don't claim to know anything about their process of a party replacing their own nominee.
Well, especially at this late date, because the election is probably in less than a month. Right?
And it was a Democrat donor that exposed it.
Was it? So it was a donor. See, I didn't even know. The thing I read talked about him sending it to a Republican legislator, which I thought was kind of interesting.
But it was about a Republican legislator.
Well, it was about a Republican legislator, but it was also sent to a Republican legislator. I thought, you're saying it was sent to a donor.
By mistake.
Okay. Oh, well, maybe. So I don't know what the deal is then.
Or at least that's the understanding,
Okay. I don't know, but
is it criminal what he did?
Yeah, I don't think I know enough to know. I don't.
Well, it's get close to inciting violence or threatening it.
I don't know if it's inciting, but it's a threat. I guess sorta. It's not direct. So I would be. So I don't know, but I would guess that some district attorney or something. I don't.
Okay.
Somewhere is looking at that.
So here's where I'm going with this, Randy. I don't think I've seen partisan divide so deep as I see now. What do you think?
I would tend to agree. You have different divides. You have party divides, and then you have factions within parties, and both of them can be pretty fierce. And I've heard in the fairly recently, I've heard both Congressman Hearn and I think Mark Wayne Mullen too talk about how the base demands this partisanship. They demand
red meat. Yeah,
they demand that you get up in front of the cameras and excoriate the other side. And I think I understand that, but I kind of go two different ways on this. One is that I can't think that it's very good, but I also wonder what's driving it, why it's that way. We learn the who, what, when, where, why and how. And for me over the years, why has always been the most important question.
Do social media algorithms stoke the flames?
Well, I don't know much about algorithms, but I think they must, because we get, I'm not on social media a ton. Mm-hmm. I'm on Facebook some. I look at X a little bit. Most of the others I don't pay much attention to. Mm-hmm. But X especially, it's like everybody's got to pile on and be.
Yeah.
And Facebook is similar. Facebook, X.
I mean, even Facebook is, you can put like the most, you think, innocuous thing on Facebook, and somebody's got to jump in there and turn it into. It's like nobody.
Hate speech. Yeah.
Well, nobody, we used to, for 80 years in Tulsa, we had a gridiron show, where we did song parodies and made fun of politicians and public figures and stuff. And it finally went away. And one reason it went away is because people couldn't laugh at themselves.
Oh, great point. I remember that.
Yeah, I think
people just couldn't laugh at themselves anymore.
Well, I think a part of it's our whole culture. Mm-hmm. And our culture is, I'm looking at football scores while we're discussing, and our whole culture has become our team, their team.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten so into this competitive nature that, whether you're an elephant or a donkey, if you're red or blue, it's more than it used to mean. Mm-hmm. And so what's weird is the teams seem to have switched, because up until the 70s, the blue was the people of labor and the common man, and Republicans were for the affluent, and now it's almost the other way around. We've gone the other way, where all the labor and common folk have switched over to the GOP, and the Democrats are all the rich fat cats and so forth. But the spirit has intensified so much that like you said, I'm on Facebook. He knows. I mean, I almost live on there. I'm there from 6 a.m.
He adds to midnight. The problem.
Well, yeah. I'm an agitator. That's true. But sometimes I agitate. But it's, but we've seen, some of the stuff I read is just, and on X, like you said, it's just crazy, the stuff that people take offense to. And what's even worse to me is some of the things that people are willing to defend, that common sense will tell you that this is crazy. You can't. Yeah. This is the indefensible, and yet you're here trying to defend it.
And on top of all that, you never know if those are real people, or if it's somebody, or if it might be a real person, but it's somebody being paid, or whatever, or it's just a quagmire.
Yeah. No, we had a famous knockdown drink the day Trump came to the Maybe Center, and that night told Greta Van Susteren that there were 20,000 people at ORU Stadium, and he's defending it. I got the dig. Yeah. Okay.
But it was true.
Okay. I want to break for an infomercial here.
That one will never end between us.
I'm going to break for an infomercial. Folks, I turned 64 this year. I never got so many invitations to go out to dinner with Medicare insurance providers, especially now. And they're offering all kinds of things, man. I want to tell you guys, I've already picked my agent, Eddie Huff. And if you're like me and you're in a situation where you need to renew or anything like that, Eddie's a local guy, okay? He keeps office hours here. He answers his phone, and I just want to put a plug in for him, and you still haven't fed me dinner.
Well, mainly because it's illegal.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, you could take that person and take that mailer and mail it into CMS, Center for Medicare Medicaid Services, and hopefully, get those people to lose their license. Yeah. But you cannot do dinners. I mean, if it's truly a dinner, anything over $15 is
But Eddie,
so much per group. So
if I sign up with one of these national ones that you see on the cable TV channels,
right,
the best I get for service is an 800 number,
Right.
and I probably never talk to the same person twice.
You will never will. That's exactly right. But you'd be surprised how many people. I call it dialing for dollars. There are these people in a room that are just dialing for dollars. Nope. Okay. Thank you. Nope. Thank you. Oh, yes. Yeah, sure. Here, let me sign you up.
Yeah.
So Randy.
Eddie Huffy Insurance Agency. We're in South Tulsa off of Memorial, and Eddie's got a local phone number, and it's, not a, Google Voice phone number. It's a real one.
It's a real one.
All right.
That rings on the show sometimes.
That's right. You watch, Alto's going to ring the phone now.
Yeah.
All right. Back to the show. What do you got?
Well, no, essentially, this whole deal you're talking about, I don't think America has been as politically divided since the Civil War. And over different issues, back then it was the slavery issue was the ultimate thing that started the Civil War. There were other sub issues that basically became more state sovereignty versus federal, authority. But I think we are in a place now. I mean, some of the things I read, I can't even believe. I mean, we're talking people that are bent on pure anarchy or whatever the government says, whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden or you name them on the Democrat side, you're going to get somebody that comes from left field with something, and you can tell this is not a sound thought being expressed here. This is just somebody that's nuts out there that hates for the sake of hatred. It's not about policy or anything. They've just been convinced these people are evil and have to be stopped. And now I love pure, good, sound thought and reasoning in attack of an idea. But when it gets to attacking the person and wishing harm on them or their children or their family, that's a line that needs to be drawn.
Yeah, going back to the guy, and that's why I say the guy in Virginia, that just, from what I know of it, there just doesn't seem to be any justification for that.
Mm-hmm. It is repeated series of text deals.
Yeah. So I will say this. You asked me about the most divided, and I'm most of my reading now is actually listening, and I'm listening to a history of the United States from 1929 to 1945 by David Kennedy, which got me to thinking about some things. So I grew up in the 60s, in the 70s, and so I can remember some of the civil rights stuff where people got killed.
Yeah.
I can remember anti-war stuff where people got killed, blowing up the ROTC building at the University of Wisconsin, the Symbionese Liberation Army,
Patty Hearst.
So, maybe it's just a different perspective, but we were pretty divided.
You're right. That's the one other time that comes to mind.
Well, if you go back into the 30s, when we had, real communists, communism was not quite as
underground
I mean, it was, and you had this great division between the haves and have-nots. You had the Jodes going out to California in their Model T, and then you had, the Rockefellers,
right?
And then and we had the Civil War. But if you in Oklahoma, we had some pretty steep divides. We had
there's strong socialists at the time of our statehood.
We had the Green Corn Rebellion in 1917.
Yeah, in Seminole.
It was in Seminole County where you had these farmers that were going to rise up and march on Washington, gathering the army as they went along. You had
Machiavellian.
You had the veterans marching on Washington during the Depression, and Douglas MacArthur ordering soldiers to open fire on them in Washington. Yeah. So, we have some violence. It's kind of sporadic and not very focused. But it's more partisan, I think. It's more Democrat, because like during the civil rights movement, it wasn't Republicans versus Democrats. It was the civil rights versus
black versus white, but then there was also a generation gap going on.
There was a lot of it was regional. The parties were more regional then.
Yes,
the anti-war movement, you had it the same thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, you had anti-war Republicans and anti-war Democrats.
And then the feminists burning their bras at the same time.
So I think it's more partisan, and we've lined up behind the parties. Mm-hmm. And I guess one of my things is I'm not sure. So we think of the Democrats as liberal and the Republicans as conservative. And in a general way, that's true. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of things get tied on to that really have nothing to do with being liberal or conservative, or it's not really. We have some things that aren't that conservative that are tied on. We've decided they're conservative now, and the other way around.
Yeah, that's true. I always say that some people have gone so far right they find themselves left.
Yeah,
they've come all the way around.
Pat Campbell used to say that too. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So anyway, but I think the big difference of it is that the mass media and social media has made it so much worse.
Yes.
That's why you see it so much more. We didn't realize it because you pretty much hung with your people. In other words, the people that you agreed with, that was your people group in your environment. Whereas it was us and them. Now it's harder to tell. Oh, I'll give you a great example. It takes us back to the Israel thing. People that we know are Christian people, pastors, churches, and so forth, who have now turned, who used to be so pro-Israel and everything, have now gone the other way, and they're basically anti-Israel and take the position more that Israel's the bad guys because they're doing this and this. And whereas before, it was a pretty clear-cut divide there, but now you can't say it anymore because you don't know who's going to be pro, who's going to be con, and so forth. But it's all magnified because of social media.
I got good news on this partisanship thing. I got to commend Hillary Clinton. Yesterday, she and Connie Rice were on with the cable news network, and Hillary said Donald Trump is to be commended for his efforts in this latest peace deal. That was Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. We need more of that kind of objectivity because she's not a Donald Trump fan.
Obviously.
Yeah. But she's objective enough and honest enough in this situation to say, this was an amazing accomplishment at this point.
And that's so one of the things I would like people to do is not think of things as Republican or Democrat, but think of them as, is this a good idea or a bad idea? So you were talking about the team thing, and David mentioned that I started out in sports, and I did. And one of the first things I had to learn in sports, and I've probably told you this. So I came to the world mainly as a college football writer, and I covered 4 Division I teams: OU, OSU, Tulsa, and Arkansas. And I did it on a rotating basis. Every week I saw somebody different.
Yeah.
And so one of the first things I learned was, hey, you know what? The good guys are not all on one team.
Ooh.
The bad guys are not all on one team.
Yeah.
There are good guys all over, and there are bad guys all over. I mean, the first OU Texas game I covered, I was down there with Bill Connors, who was the sports editor of The World for many, many years. He's the guy that hired me. And so the night before the game, we're staying in Dallas, and we go out and meet some coaches from Texas and just sit around and talk. And it was like, well, that's kind of odd. But no, he knew these coaches from way back, and they knew him, and so you just sit around and talk.
Last night I was listening to Bob Stoops was on actually it was called Locked On Big 12 podcast. I like to listen to that daily, and he said, when I first started in coaching, he said I smack talk with the rest of them. He said, "Geez," he says, "these coaches, there's some incredible men that I had to face especially Texas."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, just great friends now. Great, he said, you got to get past that and realize they're real honorable people.
There's one exception to that.
Oh, A&M, right?
Texas A&M, yeah. There is no good at College Station. That's, I would say.
Okay.
Mark Tedford, you can hold me to that.
All right. Hey, I just saw an article on ESPN. They're picking apart Cody Campbell, one of your fellow boosters at Texas Tech.
They're just jealous.
And it has to, Randy, this is the era of free agency and no salary caps. In college, I call it now the NCFL. And what Cody Campbell is talking about, and we're seeing it now, a deal between the Big Ten and some group out of California that want to invest $2 billion into the Big Ten. This is going to be big business.
I just don't know how much if we keep on this trajectory, we're finally going to give up the pretense of college athletics.
I think it's what did in Mike Gundy's coaching tenure. I don't think he adapted.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And that happens a lot, I think, in coaching, in that things change. I saw a basketball coach's career destroyed by the 3-point shot because everything he did was based on a certain formula.
Right.
Well, the 3-point shot added a degree of uncertainty and variability.
How you guard against,
That's right. And that came in the 80s. I think you were still writing sports.
Yeah. I mean, he told me, he said, I don't think many people are going to take that 3-point shot.
Careers are built on the 3-point shot.
Absolutely.
It's like Austin Powers, $1 million for ransom.
Yeah. I mean, what's happening with college big time football? And I know basketball is some of the same thing, but I think in football we see it the most.
One of the things that's always kind of fascinated me about football is how popular it is, but it doesn't. But instead of like in baseball, you have minor league baseball. But in football and basketball, it was all related to colleges, and the colleges served as the farm teams for the pros. So the professional leagues were really kind of stunted compared to, like, if you look. I mean, I did this years ago, but there are 92 professional soccer teams just in England, not counting Scotland. Counting a couple of places.
Just Great Britain itself.
Just England.
England, right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
There's a couple of cities in Wales, but, and then at that time we had probably, I can't remember, we may have had 30. Well, now we have 30 Major League Baseball teams. We have 32 NFL teams. My point is that we've developed this system differently, and it's been a long time since if we ever had really, truly, completely amateur athletics. I don't know what it was like when you played, but I know back even in the early 1900s, you'd have ringers on college teams that would be played.
Oh yeah. A good friend of mine from what is it? Where's Fort Sill? Langston. Lawton. He was a running back, and after every game, if he had a good game, he'd find a couple of $100 bills in his shoes. It went on, and everybody knows Texas and OU were. What did Switcher say? We had the best players money could buy. But it was going on. It just went on. The only ones who really blew that whole thing was SMU and their Pony Express, with the millions being spent on these kids. And that just blew the whole thing wide open.
Eric Dickerson's Trans Am.
Yeah, Eric Dickerson and
but he never squealed. He's proud of that.
And what was the other one? He ended up ruining himself with his son at Texas Tech and all. But
James.
Yeah, Craig James. He was the other one. He ran for office, and he let his son just ruin his whole career.
Sure,
everything. His
well,
future.
bracket. But Shadur Sanders took a cut in pay this year to go pro.
Yeah. And so, but we're in a different world. And see, my kids grew up in Germany, and two of my boys played soccer there. And there's no school sports. It's all private. It's all club.
Right.
And so, and in this club, they start at 5 years old and they work up, and you may have these incredible kids that are stars at a certain level. And then when they get by the time they're 12 years old, they've gotten fat or slow or something. And so they get relegated to like the third team of that age group. And you have some young kid who's developed now and he's the star. And as they go up all the way to now at 16, basically at 16, I think you may even have some 15-year-olds that are already advanced enough and they go pro. And so they're already making hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million to play. And so we are so different that we've tried to put on the facade of amateur sport when all along people have been paid, and programs are being paid. And I don't have a problem in a sense, because of what I saw over there. What I hated was the hypocrisy of America trying to pretend the NCAA was an amateur sport division when it wasn't. It's never been. And what was worse is the only people making money from it, at the real money, were the execs running this thing, keeping these people under
the coaches. I mean, I have this theory that's completely unprovable, but for years and years, I thought, the reason that, all the colleges now have these unbelievable facilities is because they were limited on what they could pay the players. So they paid the coaches what they paid them, and they spent all this money on who has the best facilities. I mean, I think to a certain extent, we even see that in the school systems in Oklahoma. They're limited in what they can pay the teachers, so they build a bunch of stadiums.
Brand new, and each time one builds one, the other one's got to come up.
Yeah, you see the Jinx Union, whose stadium's bigger this year. But
Owasso's joined.
Oh yeah, and Bixby,
BA, and Bixby's coming. Yeah,
right. And what happened? They had some crackdowns. Like there used to be athletic dorms, right? And then the NCAA said, no, you can't do it, because that was the way they could treat them like you're living in a palace,
you eat
right?
Steak.
But I think it was at the 80s or it was in the 90s. When the NCAA itself lost its monopoly, it was getting all the TV rates money, right?
Right.
And then Notre Dame was the first to ink their own deal.
Well, Notre Dame was the first to go separately, but what broke that open, and I actually covered this a little bit, was Oklahoma and Georgia sued the NCAA for their own television rights. ESPN was arriving on the scene at the same time. That was in the 1980s. And so OU and Georgia won that lawsuit, and ABC had the exclusive rights to NCAA football. If you can remember back at that time, we would see there would be maybe 2 games, maybe televised. Keith Jackson and Frank Broyles, or Bud Wilkinson or whoever, on a Saturday afternoon. And then, so between ESPN and that, and then we got all of these syndication companies that came in, Raycom and a bunch of those. And now we've got, probably, I don't know, 30 almost every game is on television somewhere, even high school games.
Plus you got Learfield, having rights to all these radio. But I was having breakfast one day, driving up to Minnesota, and a family was coming back to Omaha from a Vikings game the day before. And it was, I got to talking to him. I said, will Nebraska ever come back to the Big 12? Oh, no. I said, why'd you guys leave? He says, Longhorn Network. Because the idea was each conference was going to ink a conference deal.
Right.
But then Texas
did their own thing.
Inked their own. And evidently that's why we lost Missouri and Nebraska and Colorado, because, we were being nice to those Texas teams to invite them into the Big 8 and make it the Big 12. And then Texas screws everybody over. And now they're gone, and I'm saying hallelujah.
So there's a story about this would have been the 1980s. Chuck Ninus was the commissioner of the Big 8, which was a predecessor of the Big 12. OU and OSU were in it. And somebody approached him and said, hey, you need to get in there and try and get Arkansas and Texas. The Southwest Conference is about to break up. And Chuck Ninus says, well, I'm not going to do that and I forget who the commissioner of the Southwest Conference was. I'm not going to do that to him. And the attitude now is so different.
Predatory. Because then Arkansas did go to the SEC.
They did. It was the biggest
and then all of a sudden that woke us up, and we took in all those Texas, including A&M for a short time, was in the Big 12.
Or they would say they took you in.
Yeah, right. They would think so.
Well, each one has
definitely Texas and Texas A&M would say that.
But think of it. You had Iowa State, who was pretty much a footstool, and different. You had a few schools on your end that weren't on par with the rest.
Here's where I'm going. It used to be, Randy, you remember these days, where you just played to your conference championship. And then, different promoters would do these bowl games to get people to come to Chamber of Commerce help. And amongst all these bowl games, the Associated Press would have their sports writers participate in a poll. And you were named national champion by a poll.
Sure. And actually, the UPI for many years did its poll before the bowl games.
Yeah.
It was based strictly. That's another thing that's really changed that I don't think people consider much, is that intersectional football used to be pretty unusual. And that was really how bowl games came about. Yeah. You got a Big Ten team went to the West Coast to play
in the Rose Bowl.
And a Big 8 team went to Miami to play in the Orange Bowl. Mm-hmm. The SEC champ always played in the Sugar Bowl. The Southwest Conference champ always played in the Cotton Bowl. All of those were originally basically invented by the tourism department of their locale.
Oh, it's a brilliant thing for SoCal.
Yeah, right. Because they started in the 30s, and not everybody went to a bowl game. There weren't that many of them. But now intersectional football is not unusual. Look at the Big Ten and the ACC. They play a Rose Bowl every week.
Coast to coast, yeah.
Yeah, the first 3 games of the season is intersectional and it's transcontinental.
Yeah, right. So the bowl games have lost that, and now they no longer, and there's so many of them. I remember, so when I was a student at OSU, there was one year OSU was 7-4 and finished, I think, 3rd in the Big 8. They didn't get a bowl.
Right.
Bowl that year
because there were only so many bowls.
Right.
Yeah. They tied for the Big 8 championship in 1976, and they went to what was called the Tangerine Bowl. It wasn't even on network television.
Yeah, I remember the Tangerine.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it got crazy in the 90s. There was like 40 bowls or something like that.
Well, so what happened? You got ESPN, and you had
Fox Sports then came up.
And I've talked about this too. It applies to so many things, sports, journalism, whatever. You mentioned mass media. We have a lot of media now, but we have no real, what I would call, or very little, what I would call mass media like we did up until the creation of like CNN, ESPN, cable television, in other words, made it big. It had been around a while because, you had everybody. So Tulsa had the Tulsa World, the Tulsa Tribune. Everybody read those. They watched one or more of the 3 And there were only
three broadcast networks.
Three broadcast networks.
Yep.
That was it.
Spanning the globe.
And if you wanted to watch sports, you could watch one college football game on Saturday and maybe two NFL games on Sunday.
Right. But
so then we had this proliferation of first broadcast to cable, and now we have internet and streaming and all of that. So we have a lot of media, but we don't have much that everybody sees, right? You find if your passion is curling, you can probably find a curling network to watch.
There's a Roku channel
on the Ocho.
But the big thing that happened in the 80s, I believe, was this upstart bowl in Arizona called Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah.
And they paid $1 million to the number 1 and number 2 team if they would move over and play each other. Because I remember one year there was like 2 or 3 teams claiming to be the national championship because a bunch of upsets happened on New Year's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And so Fiesta Bowl, I think, was that first move to a playoff. Because we went to 4 teams, about 10 years ago. And now we're moving to 12 teams?
12.
And there's probably going to be more fighting about who gets to be in that.
It'll be like the basketball tournament eventually, probably. You got 16.
And about spring break, we'll have a championship.
Well, hey, listen, hockey and basketball start in October and go all the way through June.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how the NBA players do it.
Well, think about the NHL.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, they're beating up and fighting each other.
That's true.
Breaking legs and hitting each other with clubs and stuff. I mean, and the puck, if you ever get hit with a puck, it's not a small thing.
So last night I was listening to Tim Pool and his Timcast. And you know what he's done? They all get advertisers, for their podcasts and stuff. He started his own coffee company. It's called Cast Brew. I want you to know, we're just right up there. We were doing this before Tim Pool did, except this isn't going in Eddie's pocket. This is for the orphanage in Uganda that Eddie's been promoting. So I just want you to know, Eddie's insurance agency right off South Memorial 57th. Come on by, call him up, and he'll arrange to get you some of your Ugandan mist coffee. There we go.
What is your deal today? You're Mr. Advertising. I mean,
that's right.
We're in the middle of
we haven't talked
Eddie. Yeah, I'm wondering.
We haven't talked about your book yet. Coming soon will be the audio book. And we're working on that right now.
It's got a new cover, right?
A second edition. Now, if you're a collector, get both of them, all right? Thank you.
He's out of control. All
right, back to the show.
Did you mention he will come to your house and autograph it for you?
Well, if you sign up for Medicare Advantage through him, he might have a book.
No.
No, we can't do that. That's like a free meal.
That is a big no. Yeah.
Yes.
That's like a free meal.
There we go.
No. That didn't happen.
Okay, I went too far. Yeah. Shut me down.
I think you went too far when you started. I mean, oh, man, that's funny. That's good. Well, listen, Randy, I think we really... I mean that we sincerely appreciate you coming in because we can discuss these things that we don't all agree on. That was my greatest joy about the Pat Campbell show, that especially when Elvis was there, that never did all three of us agree. We always had 2 against 1. Mm-hmm. And that's what made the show so good, because you can't, and Dave knows, and other people have learned that I will argue a position that I don't necessarily always hold so deeply, just to flesh out what the other person believes and thinks. But it's always good, and I appreciate it when I can sit and discuss with somebody. In fact, I've told this before. That's how Dave and I met. We argued about the 20,000 people at the ORU Stadium. And I was just poking him, just messing with him about it. He would say, it only holds 9,000. I said, yes, but you forgot the 11,000 out in the parking lot.
That got turned away.
That couldn't get in. They count. But anyway,
but it was kind of a loaves and fishes deal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the 9,000.
When does hyperbole
into
and
25.
lying begin? I'd say, what's the difference between hyperbole and lying? And that he's pushing the edges there.
Yeah, okay. But we do thank you, and I appreciate your work there.
I want to find out, what are you working on story-wise?
Oh boy. Well, let's see. So I did a couple. I'm trying. One of the things I'm trying to do, and it's interestingly difficult, it seems like, is finding out where the money from the opioid settlements, how it's being spent.
Good for you.
And whether. So what you tend to get is there's a list of who's getting the money and a description of what it is, but the description doesn't really. I'm trying to get somebody to tell me, okay, how does this work? Is this really making a difference, or is And I'm having a hard time on that. There's another thing I've actually written a little bit about that I'm still working on, and it really kind of is bugging me. And I'm sorry, it's a little complicated, but in 2019, the state of Oklahoma, through Mike Hunter, made a deal with Purdue Pharma to receive the equivalent of about $200 million in lieu of an opioid, going to court over opioid addiction. And it went into a foundation that was affiliated with the OSU Health Sciences Center over here. And it was supposed to be used to, all sorts of things related to opioids, research, prevention, treatment, all of that stuff. Well, they hired the chief or one of the main researchers from Purdue to run that. And at the time, I asked him, I said, is there any way this all winds up back with Purdue? Oh, no, nothing like that's going to happen. So apparently OSU and the researcher had a disagreement over what the priority would be. OSU wanted it to be treatment, prevention, and education. He wanted it to be research. Just recently, they somehow worked out a deal where this foundation has split off of the university and is on its own.
Oh my! They
changed their bylaws so that the board members appointed, 2 or 3 of the board members had been, automatic OSU, like the president and a couple other people.
Probably Beeman, Dr. Beeman.
They're out. The people appointed by the governor, the speaker, and the pro tem, they're out. And this foundation with almost all of the $200 million has gone off on its own.
Oh, my goodness. Now, I talked to Jason Beeman about that because, Hunter got in a little bit of trouble.
Right.
The legislature didn't like him making deals on stuff like this and cutting them out. And he said to me, we're at a NAMI awards banquet. He says, listen, they cut the check. We cashed it, and it's been over 6 months. And now they went bankrupt because remember,
that was. He
said we would have got nothing if I hadn't worked out that settlement with Hunter.
Yeah, I know that the governor and the legislature didn't like it because he kind of went off on his own to do it.
Yeah,
I also understand why he did it. I'm not really faulting him. I just don't understand how this has come about, and. Because that $200 million, and they say, well, this is going to be for the benefit. We're going to continue to, and they're still under the consent decree, which says it has to be spent for the benefit of the people of Oklahoma and the country.
Yeah.
But
I was pretty sure that Jason Beeman was going to have a very direct.
No. Well, so what happened was he got pushed out, I think.
Wow.
So Jason Beeman is not even doing addiction
now.
anymore.
He's head of the psychiatry department at Oklahoma State, right?
Well, he said forensics, and I guess that's what he meant.
I know he's a psychiatrist.
Yeah, right. So, for a little while he was attached to the Department of Mental Health.
Exactly.
While they're trying to straighten out, that department and specifically.
Build a new hospital.
They're building a new hospital here. they've added a wing at Veneta, and they're trying to revamp that place because from everything I've heard, nobody ever gets better at Veneta.
Right. See, and it becomes a teaching hospital for OSU psychiatry department. That's where he comes in.
Well, but I believe that's the one, one here.
Right. Yeah. Particularly.
That's the one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the Veneta is the Oklahoma Forensic Center. And that's where the people who are, we used to call them criminally insane, but I think that's a no now.
Or facing charges and not yet had their day in court.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
they've been judged in some way or another. They've been judged mentally incompetent.
Right.
And so some of them have been violent, but a lot of them are people who were originally arrested for fairly minor things, but they've been found incompetent, and they can't go to trial until their competency is restored. And so, some of them have sat down here in the jail for 2 years waiting to get to Veneta.
Oh, right. Now that became a big deal in a lawsuit.
Right.
This is a great segue into that. Gettner Drummond and Kevin Stitt had big fights over whether to settle this, $100 and some million case.
Well, so so here's what happened is that you had some of these people who were stuck in jail, and Oklahoma County was worse than Tulsa County. They were stuck in jails all over the state.
You remember Terry White was held in contempt at one point for this very issue.
Right. And so the law is that they have to be, that they had to be evaluated, I think, within 30 days. And that after they're evaluated, they have to be immediately taken to Veneta.
To begin treatment.
Well, some of them were waiting 2 years for treatment. And so some of these people's lawyers started suing, and the Department of Mental Health was being fined, hundreds of dollars a day for failing to comply. Anyway, try and cut through all of that.
Right.
There was a settlement in that case, and the report. And I had a story on this probably 2-3 weeks ago. The first report came out from there were 3 people appointed to oversee the consent decree. One was chosen by the plaintiffs, one was chosen by the state, and then the first 2 picked the third one.
Okay.
And their first report came out, and it was not very flattering for the state. Basically, it said that things have gotten a little better under Greg Slavonic, but you're still not meeting any of the requirements of the consent decree.
Are we wrapped up? Did we got enough?
No, that was a good start. I wanted to give you a chance to pitch the things you're working on.
So anyway, I will stop at that.
Okay. All 3 of us were at the meeting with the mayor earlier in the week. And the final question and issue dealt with was the race riot / massacre settlement, or there's a committee that's been put together to determine how much money or whatever they're going to do with those funds. And that came up with the mayor because my fear was, and still is, that taxpayers from the city of Tulsa are going to be saddled with something that most of us had nothing to do with. Dave, myself, and probably 60% of Tulsans weren't here, had no relatives that were here when this occurred, and yet we would be strapped with tax to pay for something that other people did way back. Now, the mayor told us collectively that this is all private funds. That's going to be private. Do you believe or trust that?
I believe that is his intention. And I've heard him talk about this sort of privately. He actually sometimes tells people, look, I'm one of those people who didn't have anybody here, and I don't live in North Tulsa. And so, but beyond that, I think he's enough of a politician and, kind of a practical person to understand the difficulty and the implications of doing taxpayer funded, like individual payments to people. I mean, reparations gets everybody excited. And then you say, well, what do you mean by reparations? Well, then it gets a little, harem scarum, and not everybody has the same idea of what it means. So, as I understand it, he is attempting to raise $104 million in private funds that would go for things like housing and economic development and education, like scholarships and things like that.
No,
but here's my issue with that. Will that satisfy those who want the reparations to the survivors? Because that's what's funny. This thing has legs going all over the place. So the initial deal was supposed to be race riot survivors or descendants of survivors of the race riot, or even descendants of those who died or were injured in it. And it's kind of changing. We built the dog park or whatever you call it down there, the Reconciliation Park.
Oh, well, that's not a dog park.
Right.
It is.
It's actually a very nice park.
It's just off Reconciliation Way, which used to be named for a famous Tulsa.
I predict it will end up where people take their dogs through there. But anyway, it's a kind of a joke. But anyway, so that was one part. The state has given scholarships now to young people from North Tulsa to any state.
See, that's just wrong.
All of these things. But that's what the state came up with. But I know for a fact, having gotten emails about this, one of the city councilors from North Tulsa in particular, you know who she is. She is part of the national the national slavery reparations, and she's trying to intertwine this with that and gain money on a broader scale. Right. And that's what my problem is, that you have, as Booker T. Washington called them, race hustlers that want to keep the grievance people that want to keep the grievance alive because they get paid from that, and it keeps them in power, whether it's financial or power through people's, we need you in there, that type of thing. And that's what bothers me. But I hope that the mayor, listen, I think he's one of the most intelligent. I told you that, or we talked about it. I think he's one of the most intelligent, articulate, and good guys at heart. But I feel he's trapped in no man's land. So
this has been, I've been following this for over 25 years now.
You've written a book, a very concise.
Yeah, I've actually written 2 books about the subject you're talking about, because I wrote one about 2021. 1921 and 2021. And so the things that you express concern about have been connected to this for as long as I've been affiliated with it. Back in the late 90s and the early 20s, there was this friction about how can we use this as a bridge to other reparations for other things, including slavery. And some people did not want to go down that road, and was the goal of some other people. So, I don't think I can say with any confidence what the motivations of individual people are. That's a very difficult thing. But to answer your basic question, no, there are people who won't be satisfied with that. But there are always going to be people who aren't satisfied. And the way I look at this, and maybe I'm wrong, but it wouldn't be the first time. But the idea I've kind of developed over the years is that when we talk about the race massacre, or we talk about slavery, or we talk about anything that happened a long time ago, a lot of that is not about that. That's the thing, the MacGuffin, which is what Alfred Hitchcock used to call it. That's the thing that you put your your frustration or your anger or whatever in. That's the focus of it. But it's really about everything that's happened since then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had people who blamed the fact that they lived in a bad house in a bad neighborhood, wherever that house or neighborhood was, on something that happened a long time ago. And maybe there was a connection, but because there are these things that pass down through generations in unexpected ways.
Right.
But I would say for most people, it's not what happened 100 years ago. That's part of it, but it's what also happened 75 years ago and 50 years ago and 25 years ago and yesterday.
So things get conflated. Just
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so, and that's my concern is if you are, I mean, we have an actual document, a census from 1920, just a year before.
Mm-hmm.
So we would know the 5,000 or so people who lived in that area of Tulsa.
well, you would know who was there. You would know who was there when the census taker went door to door.
But that's a good starting point.
That's a good starting point.
And beyond that, maybe the best thing to do is to, Monroe, form an ad hoc committee to come up with your best guess of who actually lived here. So then we know who their descendants are by birth certificates. Okay. And limit it to the people who actually have damages from that.
Well, but see, I even have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
And my problem is, who do you take the money from to pay those damages?
Well, I agree. But if he's got a private foundation willing to put money up for that, then fine, just limit it to that, because otherwise you're encouraging more and more of this. And you had said earlier, and I kind of cut in for a second, like, not because you are in North Tulsa or not because your skin color is this. You know, if you were harmed by something that happened that was truly a racial injustice.
Well, I believe, as I understand, there were at least 30 white people that were killed in this thing as well.
A good point.
Do they get to collect any reparations?
Yeah, it's probably not 30, but yeah, there's at least 12. And there were also some white property owners who lost property. In fact, the test case for the insurance companies involved a white property owner, the Redfern case. So all of those complicate, when you bring that up, people, you're being, whatever. But it's just the facts.
Yeah, it is.
It's just the facts, and it complicates what you're trying to do. And you're talking about, there are people who are smarter than I am that have worked on this a lot, but, you can go back and find out who owned property in that affected area. I would say it's not a matter of, racial injustice. It's a matter of just injustice
or stupidity.
But Randy,
on that scale.
Let's look at couple of rednecks are at a bar and they start fighting over a girl, and then they take it outside and they go from insults to pushing to swinging, and they both end up in the hospital. Okay. You end up with a couple of lawsuits for damages and medical bills on that. And what judge wouldn't say, you know what? You both, are to blame here. No case. Throw it out.
Well, I don't know that I would say that in the case of the race massacre. I mean, people suffered losses sometimes of their lives unjustly. The problem is that after 104 years, how do you sort out who did what to whom?
Right. But if you're an armed combatant on either side, I'm like, you know what? This just kind of kept escalating back and forth. But the people who are truly innocent victims, whether it's their property or just some kid trying to walk home from the park, there are victims.
Yeah, my biggest issue, honestly, and this is truly my biggest issue, I'm not saying that one side did more damage than the others. Okay, we'll definitely agree that. My big issue is that, and this is what gets overlooked, and to me, this is the saddest part of it, that there was a group of businessmen from North Tulsa, Black business people, that essentially rebuilt North Tulsa,
right,
to be more prosperous than it had been before.
Without government funds.
And that is totally overlooked because people don't want us to look at that. They would rather look at the grievance, keep the grievance guys again. But those men, because I don't know if you know, I'm sure you know the story that there was a group of white business people that wanted to buy all that property. And to his credit, there was a judge that said no. And he allowed the black businessmen to have the property and get the loan. They got the loans and got it, and of course paid it off and rebuilt North Tulsa. And so that is always overlooked. No one wants to talk about that because that diminishes the people's feelings about how horrible this was. People and people are still today trying to blame the plight of North Tulsa on 1921. And that's just crap. That's just the stupidest and dumbest thing ever, because that community rebuilt more prosperously than it had been in the past. What killed North Tulsa was integration. All the businesses, the black businesses, when you used to have to buy your groceries at the black store, a department store, you had to have a black dentist, you had a black doctor, you had a black this and that. These people many of them went out of business. Because everybody,
the black folks shopped at Renberg's and Frug's and Reed's and all.
Woolworths is the big one, and So anyway, that's my rant.
So I would say that the integration was a big part of it, but also the change in the business model. When just all small business, these were all small businesses, so all small businesses began to suffer in the 50s and 60s. First, you got Sears, and then
the chain stores,
and
Monkey Wards.
So all of that played a factor. And then when you got urban renewal and the highway came through there, it pretty much made it impossible for it to ever come back.
The highway.
Yeah.
Yeah, 244.
They never shut down a street on the north side of that interspersal loop. I looked at the map. They're all still there.
Yeah, but I mean, you look down here, or I guess it's up here, 51st and Harvard. That's like the Great Wall of China. You know, and so anytime you put a highway, the same thing happened with the Crosstown Expressway from downtown out to the east. That all used to be one neighborhood.
But I agree with that, Randy, because it would be like a mile between underpasses, right? But up there on 412, every square block, a bridge goes under on the north side.
Yeah, but it might have. So here's what happened with those two things combined. They went in and did urban renewal and tore down a bunch of stuff, which was and from what I wasn't here, but from what I understand, most of it was in pretty bad shape. And among other things, they built the big tower housing project because they had to have some place to put everybody.
Which one?
The one that's on top of the hill, north of OSU Tulsa. Okay. And then they went in and they built some houses and stuff in the north part of what I call Old Greenwood, like up by Carver Middle School and First Baptist Church. But that southern part, they kept it all in one big parcel. And the idea was that they were going to build a big housing project there.
Yeah, but that was the 90s. That was Susan Savage.
No, that was before that. This was under Jim Inhofe. Well, let me back up. So these things took a long time, but under Jim Inhofe, there was a deal worked out where Lincoln, I think it was Lincoln Properties, they got that piece of land, the piece of land where the Westport apartments are on the west side of the Arkansas River, and another piece down on the other side of the Arkansas River. Mm-hmm. And for that, the city got enough money to build the first low water dam.
Yeah, this is that property trust that the city runs, right?
Right. Yeah, this would have been, this is the Tulsa Development Authority.
Yeah.
So they built the West Port apartments. They built the other apartments on the other side of the river, but they never built the apartments where OSU Tulsa is now because it was the 1980s and there was no money.
No.
And there were all kinds of plans but they never let people go in there and buy like a lot.
Right.
And put in a house. So,
and that was because the city, just bulldozed everything. in the mid 80s, this was after Inhofe, I remember the prostitution at Haskell in Maine. And I remember one time I got lost trying to find a delivery and like, oh my God, a woman just whistled at me. Where am I? I'm at Haskell in Maine.
Did you ask her for directions?
But what I'm saying is that area, Haskell in Maine, got bulldozed in the later 80s and 90s.
But that's a different area than what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is where it was right in the heart of the old Greenwood. That's
a little further east.
It's where OSU Tulsa is now.
Yeah.
And it just sat there during the 80s and nothing happened with it. And that's when, during Susan Savage's time, well, I think it actually started under Roger Randall.
Right, because then he resigned to take over.
And that's when it was the University Center at Tulsa at that time. And Roger's idea was that eventually it would be a Tulsa State University. Mm-hmm. And I can go on for hours and hours on that. And you don't want to do that. But what I'm saying is that there were sort of natural forces that took down Greenwood in the 50s and 60s. And then the government their intentions were undoubtedly good, but it just put the final, because they left that little corner there, that one block, that business, and there's no way. I mean, when I moved here in 1979, Greenwood didn't even go through to the south. The only way you could get to Greenwood was coming along Archer or come from up north somewhere, and there was nothing there. Nobody ever went there.
But see, that's my point. We need to correctly identify the issues. So what I'm saying is we can't blame the 1921 riot on the state of North Tulsa, South Tulsa, whatever, today. If to me, the bigger amount of damage was done, as you say, in the late 50s, 60s, there in that period of time, all the way into, say, the 80s. So many of the issues and problems we have today are more correctly and directly related to the 50s, 60s, 70s than they are to the 1920s. And so that's my whole argument.
Yeah, I think you and I would, in a broad sense, agree. We might disagree on some details of that, but that's what I'm talking about. It's not just one thing.
Yeah. That's also Development Authority that you bring up, I think plays an important role here, because they would take areas like Pine and Peoria, the northeast corner. I remember when that was just a bunch of little moderate, low income people lived there, and there was a gas station on that corner. Development Authority came in, eminent domain, whatever, build a shopping center. I'm telling you, that shopping center has cost this city way more than the city got on sales tax, or it could be. I don't know. But
it's taken a long time, but it has. That big grocery store they built there, that's never worked out. But most of those other spaces are open, and now there's a big Quick Trip there, and there's several franchise places in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know how all of that has worked out, but the thing about Greenwood, the thing I've heard for over 25 years, the bottom line is most of that used to belong to individual Black property owners, and now it doesn't.
Right,
and that's the thing that gets it at some people. But to get to, you're talking about, there are always going to be people who disagree. There are always going to be people who maybe in their minds they're doing the right thing, maybe not. But to the rest of us, it looks like, well, they're just trying to take advantage of the situation.
Those property owners, let me say, but again, see, that's a personal issue. In other words, I'm sure nobody came and held a gun to their head, so you must sell this or get rid of this property. It's for example, I'll give you an example. I don't know, the Black townships down south, Muskogee, Haskell, and Taft, right?
Yeah.
They were very affluent. We had, farmers, ranchers, oil people. They had all of this affluent, and then what happened? Because I've read, there's books written about it, but the children the inheritors of these, the heirs of these people who worked their butts off to create something down there, they decided, well, they didn't want to work that hard, and somebody offered them money for their property and so they sold it away and decided to move to Chicago, New York, where black people can have fun, or
where
whatever.
they can rent.
Or whatever, yeah. And basically, then the rest of the community, it just went down. And
it's not just black, by the way. I mean, there's a lot of small towns in Oklahoma that are going away because, and I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, to some people, all they're saying, okay, you can say all of that, but the bottom line is, this used to be ours, and now it's not.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm blaming the Development Authority for a lot of that.
So do a lot of those people,
because eminent domain becomes a tool of the municipal government to create shopping centers where there used to be homes.
I mean, I think from what I understand, and again, I wasn't here, people in that area when urban renewal came through, they really didn't have a lot of options. I mean, they were pretty much told, you can go through, but and
what do they call it? Not public domain.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
I mean, we can go to court, but we'll still win. And
we'll win.
Yeah, and so I had a neighbor who owned a bunch of rental houses around, including several over east of TU. And I don't know if you remember this, but that used to be, kind of a rundown area. Yeah. And TU got busy about 25 years ago and went in and bought they used eminent domain to clear it up. Well, my neighbor lost at least one of his rent houses.
Yeah.
And he said, they paid me for what it's worth on the books, but they didn't, but it's not that's part of my retirement. I'm going to, I was going to be getting $500 a month out of that thing for indefinitely.
Right. And that's my problem with eminent domain. Remember, they were going to put in a shopping center out towards Sand Springs. And they were going to do eminent domain on a church, and that pastor threw a fit, and that stopped that. And the whole question is it a proper use of our U.S. constitutional eminent domain clause for economic development versus city infrastructure or state infrastructure? I get it if we got to put a road or bridge in or something like that, but just for the sales tax, that the city's going to collect, to me, that's not a reason.
Another question I have is, why did we have to come up with not just the Tulsa Development Authority? We came up with NTEDI, North Tulsa Development Authority. And, it's again, like basically.
So NTEDI is a different thing. I mean, it doesn't, I don't think NTEDI is mainly a financing authority.
Okay.
And so what they is my understanding, and mainly what they do is figure out ways to finance some of these things, like the shopping center you're talking about. And so why do we have it? I don't know that much about the background. I don't even know. It's not clear to me whether it's a government entity or a private entity or some kind of a, neither fish nor fowl kind of thing.
Flying fish or a swimming fowl.
I just remember Chris Medlock, having served on the city council one time. And it's like Chris was no longer in city government. And about 3 years later, he's griping about things like, in his mind, he still is. He says, it just ticks me off to see these closed up shopping centers turned into churches where there's no revenue collected. In his mind, it's like, well, I'll tell you, 69th and Riverside, there's a field there that's been for sale for 30 years. And one day I'm hanging out with Dewey Bartlett at a political convention. I said, Dewey, think of how much sales tax you didn't collect because we didn't have a Quick Trip there. Oh, that got his attention. It's still vacant. But this is what you want to get their attention. You talk sales tax dollars.
So this is a totally different line of thought, and you guys maybe might want to talk about it next Saturday or something.
Okay.
But just the idea of how your tax system shapes your city, and because Oklahoma and Oklahoma cities rely so much on sales tax, and how it affects what we think about. We have to get you mentioned it. We got to get retail sales. And it's really tough because guess what? Retail sales are shrinking as a percentage of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you go to Target and you're still one of those people that buys a vinyl record or a CD, you pay sales tax on that.
Mm-hmm.
If you get on one of these and go to, a Pandora or something and start streaming your music, you don't pay sales tax on it.
On a service. Yeah. 71st in Harvard, they did not put sound barrier walls on the southwest corner for the longest time. And that was a Susan Savage development of the 90s. They're always playing that we're going to have retail. That's the only intersection where there's no commercial in there. And finally, they kept fighting every other business going in there. The neighborhood did. And now there's a bank in there. Guess what? Banks collect no sales tax. They're as about as unprofitable to a city as a church is.
I wrote a little story for the weekend about city finances. There was a legislative deal on it. And the mayor of Stillwater said, he said, well, for us, I sure wish we could assess a surtax on kegs of beer, because in our town that way, because most of our a big share of our municipal expenditures are related to the consumption of beer.
Yeah,
that's good
for sure. I wanted him to pitch. How do you get your book?
Yeah.
Oh well, it's just so it's a bookstore.
Did you have one or two books?
I have two books. I have Tulsa 1921, which is basically just the race massacre. And then Tulsa 2021, which is all the stuff that happened in 2020 and 2021. The Trump visit, the pandemic, the election, all of that stuff. Fighting over masks. And
how do we get that?
That'll be interesting.
They're at the bookstores, or it's on Amazon or wherever.
Great. You guys support Randy's work.
All right, everybody. Hey, thank you. Thank you, Randy, for taking the time. This has been very interesting, and it sprouted wings in the middle of it and decided to take us in.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's good. It's good to see your enthusiasm.
It really
and it's been a really good show. So anyway, hey, everybody, you can go to freshblack.coffee for the video of this and recording of this. And we're on, where are we on now, Dave?
Well, if things are working like it shows, we're on Rumble live, but we're simulcast over to YouTube, Fresh Black Coffee on YouTube, and Facebook, Fresh Black Coffee.
And on Rumble, what do we call?
Fresh Black Coffee Podcast
on Rumble. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. God bless. And we look forward to seeing you or talking to you next week. Thank you.